Welcome to the home and mind of the phantom texter. In this podcast, both the text document and the audio transcription, attributed to James Ray on March 20th, 2020, express a reflective journey to a lakal pivotal point of decision. The speaker acknowledges past sacrifices and experiences, both positive and negative, having endured a metaphorical tempest. Despite this, there's a declaration of ongoing resilience and defiance, with a commitment to continue moving forward through life's choices. The author embraces their unique and somewhat contradictory nature, identifying as a desert creature and a pessimist who finds connection with optimists, suggesting a continuous process of personal evolution. The YouTube version of this writing will be linked in the description. But please sit and enjoy the talk. I know I will. I will not fear, for fear is the mind killer.
Okay, so we've got two really interesting pieces here, both by James Ray, both from March 2020, and they're both titled I've Run. And we've got one that's text, and then we've got the audio recording of Run.wave.
Yeah.
And I guess our mission today is to sort of dive into this perspectives that we're seeing in these two pieces and pull out the key ideas.
Absolutely. I think what's really fascinating is how both the text and the audio recording sort of hit you with this central image right off the bat. I've run now to a place of choices.
Yeah.
And this idea of movement, of constantly sort of running towards these decision points, really seems to be fundamental to understanding the mindset here.
Yeah, and there's even, the repetition of, running from one place of choices to the next, and then it's until then I shall run.
Right.
And, it really makes you think okay, what is this running all about? You know? Could it be, just like a kind of metaphor for life in general?
Yeah.
Having to constantly move forward and engage with these different, choices that are coming up.
I think so, and there's this real sense of agency to it, right? Like a defiant kind of engagement with, almost like destiny.
Right.
You see it in lines like, no one will be faster, no one will match me.
Yeah.
Or, I am still defiant, I shall go on. There's this individual will that's coming through really strong.
Yeah, and what's interesting is alongside this defiance, right?
Yeah.
We also see this real sense of acceptance, of all these experiences that are happening.
Absolutely.
And, you could see it in the lines I smile at the darkness, it's now just another color of many.
Yeah.
I rejoice at the pains, for now they're just another in the tapestry that is.
Right. It's not this idea that the dark or the painful are inherently bad things.
Yeah.
But rather that they're just integral parts of a much bigger picture.
Yeah, they're just part of the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's this whole section about sacrifice, which I found really interesting.
Yeah.
I have sacrificed for all, I have sacrificed for nothing. I have sacrificed for the sake of sacrifice, so now I choose to sacrifice my sorrow.
That's really layered, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a progression.
Yeah.
You start with these sacrifices that are maybe obligatory or even meaningless, and then you get to this point where it's a conscious choice.
Right, like a shedding of negativity.
Yeah.
A reclaiming of personal power after, maybe a period of giving that wasn't so intentional.
Yeah, exactly. And then that idea of transformation, it's it keeps going.
Right.
With, I am a pessimist, I befriend the optimistic, I evolve into something new.
It's not about choosing one or the other, right? It's like a synthesis that leads to growth.
Yeah, embracing both sides to become more complete or something.
Absolutely.
And then, we get to this part where it's really reflective. I stand in a hall of my sacrifices. I stare at the display of my accomplishments. Such goodness, such mistakes, such a waste. What a ride.
Right, there's this real honesty to it. This acknowledgement of both the triumphs and the missteps.
Yeah.
Without simple regret.
Yeah. And what's interesting is there's no judgment,
Yeah, it's just an observation of a life that's been lived.
Exactly. And then it's I am unique, I am ambiguous, I will never be repeated.
This real assertion of self,
Yeah.
Maybe even the futility of trying to categorize a person.
Yeah, you can't pin this person down.
Right, exactly.
And then the ending I found so intriguing, I will smile at more than you will ever know.
Oh, that's enigmatic.
It is.
You know, it hints at this like depth of experience
Mhm.
that we can't really grasp.
Right, and then there's this whole metaphor of the tempest.
Oh, yeah.
I stood statue to the rage of the tempest, and it has now washed over me.
Mhm.
And then later, I now look back to see its path where it came from. Fascinating.
It makes you wonder what that tempest represents, you know,
Yeah.
some period of intense challenge maybe.
Yeah, like some huge upheaval.
And there's this like initial resistance, right?
Yeah.
And then surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally this detached, almost analytical observation of it.
Yeah, like a real sense of learning from it.
Absolutely.
And then I wanted to touch on that last little bit, the self-description.
I am, if nothing else, a desert creature.
Yeah.
It's so striking, you know?
It is.
What's that even mean?
Yeah, it makes you think about hardiness,
Yeah.
self-reliance.
Thriving in like harsh conditions.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's like across both of these pieces,
yeah.
we're seeing these themes, like this constant movement, navigating choices, embracing all these different experiences.
Right.
This defiant spirit, but also this adaptability.
Yeah.
And this real, strong sense of individuality.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how all these like seemingly different ideas kind of like work together, you know? The motion and the acceptance, the defiance and the reflection.
Yeah. It's complex, right?
It is.
Well, I guess that sort of brings us to the end of our deep dive today, but it really does make you think,
It does.
Like when you think about your own life and the choices you've had to make and the challenges you've faced,
Right.
what are those tempests that you've weathered,
Yeah. Yeah.
And what can you learn from looking back at them,
Yeah.
with that same kind of curiosity and focus on the path?
It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah, it is. Well, thanks for exploring this with me today.
Of course, it's been a pleasure.
All right. And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See you then.